Hey, Dr. Babcock. I'm going to be talking about a couple of the debated issues within the New Testament that I learned more about this week. The first one is going to be women in leadership within the church, and the second is going to be miracles within the New Testament and how oftentimes people connect miracles to being myths or to being fairy tales. So first of all, regarding women in leadership within the church, I feel like I see both sides of this debate fairly well. You see references within Scripture where Paul, for instance, says that women need to be silent during the church meeting, and people can pull that out and say, you know what, then that probably means that women don't need to be in a leadership role within the church. And then I've also seen portions of Paul's writing where he references specific women who are doing a work for the Lord, and that makes me think, you know what, maybe there is a role for women within church leadership. And I definitely see both sides of that. And for me personally, I think that as far as senior leadership role, I believe that God has given that responsibility to men. And I say that in referencing a couple things that Paul states. When he's talking about marriage, it's very evident that the men are the head of the family and the head of that marriage relationship. And he references that to Christ being the head of the church. And just as God's given men the responsibility to lead our marriage, to lead our family, I believe that transfers over to the local church as well, and that senior leadership role is specifically meant for men. However, in saying that, I believe that women have a very, very important role within the context of the local church because God's uniquely gifted women and equipped women in ways that are much different than men, and it's ways that the local church needs to thrive and to function well. I was student pastoring from 2010 to 2016 prior to feeling led to come back or to come to Moody. And I saw within my 6 years there's so many women within the church that function in leadership roles that led so well and led teams well and led people well and furthered the gospel because they were functioning in ways that God had gifted them within the local church, and in all honesty led well or better than some men probably could have given that same role because of the way that God uniquely gifted them. And that was, with children's ministry or with worship ministry. So absolutely, I believe women have a leadership role within the church because God's uniquely gifted and equipped them that are much different from men. But as far as senior leadership, I personally believe that responsibility and that role is given to men specifically. And then secondly, regarding miracles and that thought of them being connected to myths or fairy tales, I completely understand the argument of they are fairy tales or they are myths because as human beings we work within logic and like what makes sense. And our reading talked about cause and effect and law and how if this happens then this happens, and like nothing out of law can exist, and it doesn't make sense if it can't be proven by science or by natural law. And I understand that side completely because I'm a human being and I work logically. But I also know from like my own personal experience that I was healed of a blood sugar disorder called hypoglycemia when I was in 7th grade, and all I remember is I dealt with it my whole life. And one morning my mom and I were reading through the book of Matthew, and Jesus healed a man with leprosy, and me as a faith-filled 7th grader asked my mom, can Jesus heal me? If he can heal this man with leprosy, can he not heal me today? And my mom said, of course he can. And to make a long story short, we prayed simple prayer of, God, if it's your will, heal me of this. And a week went by, and all of a sudden we began to realize that my blood sugar levels weren't spiking up and dropping low every day like they used to. And to make a long story short, I was healed of it, and I haven't struggled with it since. So for me, it's like I have that personal experience that logic can't and science can't have an answer to, but I know that something supernatural happened to me. And I would challenge that. I do understand the perspective of logic, but I would challenge that if God really did create the world from nothing, as scriptures say, who are we to say that he can't function outside of what's normal and natural and logical to us? So that's my opinion on miracles and how I believe they're real and not myths.